The Cincinnati Reds are taking advantage of this trip to Miami in so many different ways.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm so glad that you're with me today. I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan, and this is my 6th season hosting the Locked On Reds podcast that is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And I really want to thank you for being alongside me here today, because Locked On Reds is for every Reds fan. I want to talk about the big thing going on in Reds country. I want to dive into some geeky stats and overreact on the whole to the 162 game season that is the MLB regular season. And on today's show, we are going to look at some new prospect rankings from Baseball America. They're my favorite website to really dive into some prospect ranking. There are so many different things that you can look at for information on prospect rankings, and they're all different, quite frankly, but I enjoy Baseball America quite a bit. We're going to look at that. We're also going to look at the start that Nick Lodolo had and the encouraging signs that we've seen from him, but the key question moving forward. But we will start first with how the Reds are just absolutely just blowing the roof off the doors of this four-day trip to Miami. That's all coming up on this episode that is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. And where we will begin today is day 2 of the Reds getting right. Elly De La Cruz went off. And look, you know, we're going to be happy about the way that the Reds have been playing these last 2 days, but I get it. I understand it. This is what they should be doing. We're not going to go crazy. I'm not sitting here telling you that the Reds are going to make the playoffs because they're beating up on the Marlins, but this is important for them moving forward. How do you build momentum from this series? The Reds need to take what they're doing here and take confidence into their next series, into the next 3, 4, 5 series, if they hope to get where they're telling us that they're going to get. The Reds need to sweep this series, yes, but they also needed to play some good baseball while doing it. Like, if you can imagine, they end up, you know, in some alternate timeline universe of this MLB season, maybe they sweep the Marlins in 4 games, but all 4 games are 1-run affairs and they're 2-1 ball games or 3-2 ball games. Like, how, I mean, are we going to feel really, really good about that? Maybe. But the way that they're winning these games and the way that they're playing in these games is very encouraging because they're just dominating. And that's what they should be doing. And the dominance just begins with Elly De La Cruz. He made his first out at the plate. Think about this. Since he got to Miami, he's made 1 out. Now, he was 4 for 5 in the first game as well. The non-hit, he reached on an error and later came around to score. But the fact that he has only made 1 out while hitting in this series is phenomenal. 8 hits in 2 games. 4 in the first, 4 in the second. The first time that a Red has had 4 hits in back-to-back days since Dmitri Young in 2001. I'm pretty sure this is, and I'm not going to turn around for our YouTube folks so you can see, this is a Sean Casey jersey that I'm pretty sure I've had since 2001. So this is as old as that streak has gone of a Reds hitter getting back-to-back games of 4-hit games. Elly was just phenomenal. 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 runs scored. He had a steal. The steal, by the way, came, and in case you didn't see this, he stole third base. And the pitcher never threw the ball to home or otherwise, to third base, no matter what. What happened was Elly caught the starting pitcher, Max Meyer, looking in for the sign, and he looked over and he saw that the third baseman, Jake Berger, for the Marlins, was kind of looking down at the ground for just a split second. This wasn't even like, you imagine like a little leaguer, like out there, like playing with a clump of dirt or something. That wasn't even that bad. Like Jake Burger literally had a moment where he looked down at the ground, was probably thinking about something, and then snapped back into the game. But by the time he snapped back into the game, Elly slid into third. He changed the game with his speed there. He ended up scoring after that. And on another play later on in the game, he had singled. And then in Spencer Steer's at bat following him, Spencer Steer hit a ground ball to the shortstop, Xavier Edwards. And Elly, instead of stopping at second, because Xavier Edwards looked off Elly and was like, yeah, there ain't no way we're getting him at second. I'll just go to first. Well, in the process of Xavier like winding up to throw to first, you could see like out of the corner of his eye, he catches Elly. Elly rounds second and is still going as Edwards goes to throw to first. And I think it just absolutely baffled Edwards. He misses the throw to first. Spencer Steer reaches on an error, and Elly ends up at third. Yes, Elly went first to third on a ground ball to shortstop. He does things that make no sense, and they're absolutely phenomenal. But he was not the only guy that had a good game. There were multiple players. And in fact, I kind of wanted to look at this. TJ Friedl was not a multi-hit day for him. He did have multiple RBIs, 2 RBIs, but he did have a double. But the key for him, he is beginning to look locked in at the plate. And I've been critical of the Reds playing TJ Friedl in the cleanup spot. But honestly, I think TJ Friedl is just a guy, just a dude. He's like, yeah, wherever you want to bat me, I'm going to do well. And he was having some really good at-bats, hitting the ball hard, things like that. Didn't get the results, the whole kit and caboodle when it comes to things like that. But he was looking pretty good, even though the stat sheet says he was just 1 for 4. And of course, Ty France, back-to-back games with a home run. If Jeff says, he doesn't like you, if I say I don't like you, apparently you're going to go off. Ty France, 2 games with a homer. And honestly, there were a couple of flyouts that were to the warning track in Miami that you can see that fly ball like carrying into the stands at Great American Ballpark. There's something about Ty France's game, and he could be very streaky, but he could be interesting for the next year and a half because he is under team control for next year as well. Tyler Stevenson, he had a 2-hit night. There were a couple of other guys that had multi-hit nights. Tyler Stevenson, Jeimer Candelario, and Noelvi Marte all had 2-hit nights. Stevenson hit a homer, his 14th of the season, and he sets a new season high mark in his career. I believe that he's going to hit more as the season goes along, but he is looking phenomenal right now, hitting the ball hard. Candelario, he has 2 hits. I think he also had a walk as well. Good to see him getting on base. But Noelvi Marte for me, and this is an interesting thought. It's hard to say the moment that the switch turns on. There's definitely multiple things that have to happen. But I think we're seeing the switch get flipped for Noelvi Marte. He's not back yet, but I think he's close. He's hit the ball. He's hit, the Baseball Savant StatCast has these little flames next to a player's name in the box score that represents the number of hard hit baseballs that he's had in a game. Noelvi Marte had 3 on Tuesday night, and he had 3 on Monday night. He's hitting the ball really hard. He ended up with 2 hits, including a double off the wall and like straightaway center field. That one looked like it could have carried and become a homer, but it was just a little short and bounced up against the wall. But good night for him as well. Like, it was a great get right night for the lineup. It was a great get night right for Fernando Cruz. David Bell brought him in the 7th inning, big time lead. The Reds were way up, 7-2 at that point. But that was a perfect thing. And kudos to David Bell for making this decision and not just finding, one of the whoever's on the bullpen to bring out and just eat up some innings. This was a perfect moment to have Fernando Cruz come in and just be like, you know what? I can get outs. I don't have to worry about walking people. I don't have to worry about, giving up a big hit here or there. I can just come in and pitch. And that's exactly what he did. He got 2 strikeouts, perfect inning in the 7th inning. It was great to see. His splitter, destroying Marlins hitters. And I was happy to see it. I mean, this was the Reds really breaking out of a funk. Some guys not named Elly De La Cruz, right? Breaking out of a funk and hopefully setting themselves up for a nice stretch of play for however long that lasts. But like I said on yesterday's pot, sometimes you just got to see the ball go in the hole, to use a golf metaphor. And that's what the Reds are doing here in Miami. Nick Lodolo also joined in on the Get Right party on Tuesday night. We'll look at just how much coming up next. The best way to enhance your baseball watching experience for the rest of the season is with Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's so easy to use, and they're the best because you can win up to 100 times your money with Prize Picks. All you need is as little as 4 correct picks in an entry, and you could turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. And honestly, if you haven't been clicking more on Elly De La Cruz for almost every stat category that there is for these last 2 days, then you're missing out. Go over to Prize Picks right now. Hits, total bases, runs, stolen bases, extra base hits, all of the above. Click more on all of them. He is just destroying the Marlins this year. It's been a lot of fun to watch. And Andrew Abbott on the hill tonight. The Marlins are horrible against left-handed pitchers. You saw what Nick Lodolo did, and we're going to break that down here in a few minutes, but Andrew Abbott could have a big night too. So download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB, for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. That's right. Again, code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, will get you an instant deposit boost of up to $100 for your first deposit. Pick more or pick less. It's really that easy. Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor and help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And speaking of every day, shout out to our everydayers out there. Thank you for making us part of your day every single day. And if you're not an everydayer, you can become one by clicking on that subscribe button on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app, iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, so many different podcasting apps out there. I believe we're on all of them. Click subscribe today. And for our everydayers, coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, friend of the show, Doug Gray, over at RedsMinorLeagues.com, has a new ranking, a new prospect ranking. We're going to talk about Baseball America's Reds organizational ranking coming up here in a little bit. Doug has his own. And quite frankly, there's nobody more plugged into the Reds minor leagues than Doug Gray. He's going to join us to break down some of the highlights of that on the next Locked On Reds. So make sure to join us for that. All right. Talked about a lot of the guys who were getting right on Tuesday night, getting right these first 2 games, really. Nick Lodolo was as well. Nick Lodolo had a nice bounce back start after giving up all of the runs to the Cubs in his last outing. But he had a little bit of a different approach against the Marlins on Tuesday. I mean, he had 6 innings, 2 runs allowed. All of this happened in the 4th inning to him, by the way. He allowed 2 earned runs. He had 3 walks, 1 hit on that inning, really blew everything up. And that was kind of a strange one, too, because in the 4th, his command wasn't great. He got to a 3-ball, no-strike count to the first 2 guys that came to the plate against him. He was able to battle back against Jake Berger. Then he ended up walking the next guy, but he got a strikeout, and then he got a ground ball. And it looked for a moment like the Reds had turned to and got out of the inning. But review made it look completely clear that the guy was safe at first, that he was not out. I believe it was Christian Pache was out, or was safe at first. So the Reds at that point had cleared out. They had to go back onto the field, and then all hell broke loose. He walked a couple of guys, gave up a hit. The Marlins scored a couple. Mind you, by this point, the Reds were well ahead, so sure, 2 runs kind of hurt a little bit, but it was kind of like a mosquito bite to where they were at that point in the game. So that was a nice thing. And the annoying part about that was that the command was just so off in the fourth inning, but the Reds were so well ahead in the game. And it made you think, it's like, Nick, like, cool off a minute, man. Just throw some strikes. You'll get out of the inning. You're fine. And he was able to do that. And he still pitched another 2 more innings after that, looking pretty good. Again, quality start, 6 innings, 2 runs allowed. Only had 2 hits allowed. It was just the walks in the fourth inning that really gave the Marlins their runs. But he had a different approach on the mound. The reason that I say that was he really had a much more balanced approach to his 4-pitch mix. Nick Lodolo, at least according to StatCast, throws a 4-seam fastball, a sinking fastball, a changeup, and a curveball. We know the curveball well. That's his moneymaker. He actually threw it a little bit less in this game. And he threw the 4-seamer a little bit less. He threw his sinker way more than normal. According to StatCast, he averages about 11%. He throws that pitch about 11% of the time throughout the season. In this game, he threw it 23% of the time. And he had 99 pitches, so basically 1 pitch, 1%, whatever. He threw the sinker 23 times. He was able to get some good, weak contact on that pitch, really using it because I feel like while the curveball was still effective, I mean, he had a 44% whiff rate on his curveball. That's basically where it is all the time. Guys just can't touch it. But there were a lot of times that you could see he would go to that curveball and he would miss the zone, or it'd be a non-competitive pitch. It looked outside the zone, it stayed outside the zone, and hitters laid off of it. So what does he do in those cases? He was going to the sinker. The sinker was getting him out of some at-bats that were really looking like they were going to turn into the Marlins' favor. And I thought that his balanced approach to the 4 pitches was super refreshing, because we always kind of think of Nick Lodolo as a fastball curveball guy. He needs that 3rd pitch. His changeup has really turned into a weapon for him this year. But this game, it wasn't about the changeup. It was about the sinker. And that was a really good sign for me. There were a couple of, you can look at the spin rate and you can look, his velocity was just a tick down, but it's not to the point that I would worry about it. It was only like, a couple tenths of a mile of an hour off. Nothing. Spin rate just a little bit down. I think a lot of it is he's still kind of dealing with the aftermath. I don't think he has a blister anymore, but he's dealing with the aftermath of that. It's not a thing that we as fans can really understand totally, the grip and how important that's got to feel to him. So he's getting that trust back. It's not just about, is it healed? Is it, healthy? It's, do you trust it? And the curveball sometimes, and Chris Welsh even made mention of this on the broadcast, he was like, it looks a little bit more flat than normal. And I looked at the numbers. The numbers basically said that it was pretty similar to the way it's been all season. So I think that this is just his evolution. He is no longer like, okay, if I need an out, I'm throwing the curveball. Now he understands he can go to the changeup, he can go to the sinker, or he can dot the fastball. I think that this is a very, very good thing for him long term. But long term, let's talk about that, by the way. Nice bounce back start for Nick Lodolo. But the question now becomes, how do the Reds manage his personal conclusion to 2024? The Reds are in a playoff race. As much as, some of us fans are looking at this and saying, boy, are you really though? We got to squint really hard to see how they can get back in this. But they're not out of it yet. So as much as we might want to, declare the playoff chances dead, the Reds are still managing, David Bell is still managing this team as if they're going toward that ultimate goal. So say the miracle happens. Say the Reds come back, they turn into a wild card team, bada bing, bada boom. What's that mean for Nick Lodolo? I haven't seen, and I've been looking through to see if there was an exact quote and see if they really had a range of innings, but I'm assuming that 150 innings is probably what they're shooting for. Consider this, his season workload. He is at 103 innings pitched right now. That is 1/3 of an inning away from 2022, which is his most. Obviously, he only threw 34 1/3 innings pitched last season. And the interesting thing was like different projection systems, like, Fangraphs Zips projection system only had him throwing like 83 innings this year. So he is surpassing a lot of different markers. So is it 150 innings? Because if it's 150 innings, that's in about 7 or 8 more starts, assuming that he throws about 6 innings a start, and assuming that he pitches every 5th day, he's going to hit 150 innings at about September 19th when he pitches against Atlanta. Again, assuming he pitches every 5th game. There might be some changes in there. There may be some workload management in there, different things like that. How does David Bell navigate this? And maybe the simple answer is he doesn't pitch 6 innings in every start from here on out. Maybe he only pitches 5. And then you can add a couple more starts there. But you're still running into this thing where he hits that 150 inning wall in the regular season. So does that mean that he is not eligible for the postseason? Do you push him past that and say, I think we can get you there? Because I can envision something like what we saw happening to Andrew Abbott at the end of last year. Just remember when Andrew Abbott, he kept going out and he kept saying, I'm not tired. I'm not out of it. But then in the offseason, he realized my arm was fine. My legs weren't. Is there going to be a wall that Nick Lodolo hits? There's these last couple of starts for him. It kind of feels like the first 3 innings, the first time through the order, dominates. No questions asked. Then the second time through the order happens. The 4th inning, the 5th inning, something like that. Usually the 4th inning. But the 4th inning comes along and trouble starts to happen. And he has to fight around base runners. He has to pitch out of the stretch, things like this. Is he going to be counted on for 6 innings in a postseason game? And you might be saying, Jeff, there's no chance of that happening. But David Bell cannot manage on hope. I know that we dog them a lot for doing this, and they do this a lot. They manage on hope. But if he gets to his ultimate goal, if the Reds get to their ultimate goal, and Nick Lodolo has reached his limit, this team is far less formidable in the postseason without him. It's great to see him bounce back, though. Very big time start. We'll keep monitoring how the Reds manage Nick Lodolo's workload the rest of the season. But it's been a down year for the Reds farm system. I mean, they graduated all of their big time prospects last season. So we knew that it was going to be tough to see how things move this year, but it's not even that they called up a bunch of guys and they graduated them off the prospect list. There's just been some guys that have been underperforming, so the prospect rankings have changed. I'll dive into how Baseball America sees it coming up next. Before we get to that, though, I want to tell you about Liquid IV because, it's hot outside, dude. But I am going outside. I am enjoying the sun. I'm enjoying the outdoors because who knows how much longer we're going to have this nice warm weather here in Ohio. We know how Ohio goes. You go from summer to winter like that. There really isn't a fall anymore. So I'm enjoying my outdoor activities. But that means I'm sweating a bunch and I'm getting really thirsty really fast. So Liquid IV is key. I always keep it on me because it keeps you hydrated just as good as if you drink 2 whole bottles of water. That's right. All you have to do, you open up the powder, you put it in the water, boom. Double the hydration. Liquid IV also comes in these amazing flavors, and especially for summertime, they've got this great one, Popsicle Firecracker. It kind of combines some berry flavors and some citrus flavors, and it just really tastes amazing. So you're getting great taste and great hydration all in one little pack. I don't go anywhere without Liquid IV this summer. You shouldn't either. Get 20% off of your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. Trust me, Liquid IV tastes great and hydrates you too. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and take the Reds' hometown broadcast anywhere by searching the word Reds. Also, bookmark CincinnatiRedstock.com for some great written content about your Cincinnati Reds, giving you game previews every day, giving you some big takeaways from each and every game. Over there, a lot of great folks writing about your Cincinnati Reds at CincinnatiRedstock.com. All right, the draft is over, the trade deadline is over, the draft signing period is over, so we can officially add new prospects to the Reds rankings, but there's also been some season performances that have changed some things. Baseball America is the first one that I'll use because this is I find Baseball America to be a very reliable source when it comes to minor league news, whether it comes to your Reds or any other team. I like Baseball America, and their organizational rankings for the Reds have Chase Burns on top. So, the Reds' number 2 pick in the 2024 draft, Chase Burns, is now their number 1 prospect in their organization. Rhett Lauder moves down 1 peg to number 2. Then you have catcher Alfredo Duno, who is still a teenager, hasn't turned 20 yet. He is the number 3 prospect in the organization. Chase Petty is the number 4 prospect, pitching prospect Chase Petty. Sal Stewart, who currently is still in Dayton, and he's been playing a little bit of second, a little bit of first, a little bit of third base when Cam Collier's not playing third base in Dayton, but Sal Stewart is the number 5 prospect for the Reds. Edwin Arroyo is number 6. Again, he hadn't played all year because of that injury that the labrum surgery he had in spring training. Cam Collier is number 7 on this list. He's had an up and down season when it comes to hitting. Ricardo Cabrera, shortstop, he's number 8. Julian Aguiar, who he was the Reds pitcher, the best pitcher in the Reds organization for 2023. He might be angling for that award this year. Whenever we talk to Doug Gray tomorrow, I definitely want to ask and get his opinion on that because he continues to look very well. He is moving up these rankings quite a lot. Very reminiscent of what Graham Ashcraft did a few years ago. But Julian Aguiar, according to Baseball America, the number 9 prospect in the Reds organization. And rounding out the top 10, Blake Dunn is the number 10 prospect. Now, 3 of those prospects made it into the overall top 100 for Baseball America. Chase Burns is the 28th best prospect, according to Baseball America. 28th best prospect, period. Rhett Lauder is number 38, and Alfredo Duno is number 77. Now, the Reds, I haven't seen the organizational rankings yet. I don't think they've come out with those, but I would venture to say that they're in the bottom half of the league. You'll notice, and we did a ranking, and if, everydayers will know, but we did a ranking before the draft where I kind of took a consensus of Baseball America, MLB Pipeline, ESPN, a couple of really, reliable prospect sources. And I think I included Fangraphs in there as well. But I kind of did a consensus ranking. And actually, in the top 5 at that time was Connor Phillips. You'll notice Baseball America didn't even have him in the top 10. Baseball America had him ranked number 19 in the Reds organization. He has had a really tough season. Was just not commanding his pitches at all at AAA Louisville. They sent him to the complex, to the Arizona Complex League. Goodyear. They sent him to Goodyear 7 weeks ago. He hasn't been back to AAA since. Now, reports are in Arizona, but they don't have regular games or anything like that to report on. But reports are that his progress in Arizona is encouraging. But you don't go from AAA to the Complex League and not see your ranking take a hit. In fact, I mentioned a few minutes ago when I was talking about Nick Lodolo, Fangraphs Zips projection system, had X amount of innings for Nick Lodolo. They actually had Connor Phillips throwing a lot of games this year for the Reds in the major leagues. They had him approaching 100 innings in the major leagues. The Reds have not even considered that at any point this year. It's very telling, especially, he was a guy, and again, this just goes to show you, like, we jumped on it a little bit this past offseason, where we're like, man, the Reds got all this organizational pitching depth. But they've all kind of had some down years. Chase Petty's had a down year. Rhett Lauder, don't think he had the meteoric run through the minors that we thought he would have. Still think we see him at some point next year, and maybe he pushes for a starting spot out of camp, but it's not as like, set in stone. He's going to do it next year as we initially thought. And quite frankly, I don't think there's any consideration to call him up in September. Remember, you only get 2 extra roster spots in September now. This is something that happened a few years ago, the rule change. You don't really get that many extra roster spots when September comes around. You go from 26 to 28. So I don't see them calling up Rhett Lauder this year at all. And he may not be a foregone conclusion as much as I thought he would be for next year. But it's interesting to see how the rankings move. For the record, Charlie Condon, the number 13 overall prospect, according to Baseball America, 15 spots ahead of Chase Burns. But there's also the other side of that coin that it is, prospect rankings are fun and all, but quite frankly, it's not as if you make it to the top 10 and then you become a Hall of Famer. That just doesn't always correlate. In fact, most of the time it's the opposite. But it's nice to see that Chase Burns is rated so high after just being drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. But overall, a down year for the Reds organization. We'll talk more about that tomorrow with Doug Gray as he comes on with us to talk about the Reds farm system and how his prospect rankings move. I know that he has Connor Phillips way down there as well. We'll talk about him a little bit. We'll talk about some other guys that had, a rise through the system like Julian Aguiar. I'll get his feelings about Blake Dunn because I don't know how to feel about him. I know we saw him just a little bit here in the major leagues this year, and really it was more out of necessity than it was any sort of pomp and circumstance for him being called up. But I just don't know, man. I don't know. Doug Gray will help set us straight on tomorrow's episode. But thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast and making us your first listen. Now make Locked On MLB your second listen. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully every single day. He's got it covered from every single angle. That's over at Locked On MLB. You can find it on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, or you can find a link in the description of today's episode down below. Don't even have to go looking for it. Locked On MLB, of course, is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And we will be Locked On Reds every single day.